Do you hate racism more than you love your daughters? Well, do you? That may sound like a rhetorical question, but there are people in this country, including in government, women as well as men, who don't give a damn about your daughters, and that is putting it mildly. This man indecently assaulted a woman and a schoolgirl in Epping. This man dragged a 15-year-old girl off the street in Falkirk and raped her. This man raped a woman in London's Hyde Park. And, most shocking of all, this lowlife stabbed a young woman to death with a screwdriver in Walsall. That murder wasn't a sex crime. It was committed because for some reason he had taken a dislike to her, even though there was no credible evidence that she had ever had any contact with him. He was staying in a hotel at your expense, where single mother Rhiannon White was working. Now her young son will have to be raised by her sister and mother. All these men have one thing in common. They are illegal immigrants who have no right to be here. For the most part, we don't know who they are or where they come from because they burn or otherwise destroy their papers before they arrive. In the case of the murderer, we don't even know how old he is. He claimed to be 19 when he arrived in Britain on a small boat in July 2024. Does he look 19 to you? Quite a few have been lying about their ages, passing for teenagers in order to get special treatment, and placing teenage girls in danger. We do know something about the Falkirk rapist. We know he's from Afghanistan, and that he arrived in Britain after swelling through other European countries like a wealthy tourist rather than a dissident fleeing persecution or torture. These men, and they are overwhelmingly men and of a certain age, arrive in small boats from France or are otherwise smuggled into the country. Instead of deporting them, the Starmer government has been putting them up in 4-star hotels at your expense, while our own people struggle to find accommodation. People like this woman.
I know, baby. Mummy knows. I'm so sorry. I wish this could all be better.
A mother, homeless, with 3 children under the age of 5. How did it come to this?
He just said someone will call me tomorrow.
Amid her phone calls for help, her eldest asks to go home.
I don't know.
But now this is home, the streets of London. We weren't sure she'd want to be identified when we met Danielle in this park in South London. They used to have a council house, but had to move out because Danielle faced threats of violence. Initially, the borough paid for her to have temporary accommodation elsewhere, but then
I got a call to say they can no longer fund my accommodation where I'm at, as the police have said that it's not safe no longer to return back to Southwark, so they don't owe me a duty of care.
She says she sent an email. Check that phone.
Southwark emailed Danielle with a letter which said, present yourself to another local authority homeless person unit to seek rehousing outside of Southwark. This is on the grounds of personal protection for you and your children.
The other councils are just turning their back on me, saying it's not their duty of care to house me, it's Southwark's duty of care to house me, and Southwark are coming back saying it's not their duty of care to house me, it's any other borough that I approach to house me. So we're just going round in a loop, but in the meantime me and my children are homeless and nobody seems to care.
The landlord said Southwark had stopped paying. He gave her 24 hours notice, then changed the locks. As we sat on the bench, the Southwark housing officer called, confirming that despite her being on the streets, they would not extend the temporary accommodation.
The 4 incidents discussed above are the tip of a very large iceberg. Under pressure from both the government and the usual leftist cabals, many crimes committed by fake asylum seekers are not reported by the mainstream media, or are reported in such generic terms that their identities are obscured. If the suspect is white, this detail will often be given. But if there is no description at all, or if he is alluded to as, for example, a man from Epping, he may well be an illegal immigrant. Starmer says he can't stop the boats, which he blames on criminal gangs. That is a lie. The truth is he doesn't want to stop the boats because his government is deliberately destroying Britain. If that sounds a bizarre claim to make, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Ask yourself what would Xi Jinping do if hundreds of anonymous men turned up on Chinese beaches day in, day out. He'd order the Chinese Navy to blow the boats out of the water, and those who landed would be rounded up, then sent to internment camps where they would be held until they could be repatriated or otherwise deported. In Britain, the government is doing nothing to discourage or halt this invasion, while they and their allies, traitors to Britain, are doing everything in their power to stigmatise and harass those who are trying to halt it, including by these uniformed thugs. One of the things they do is call these people racist, a word that has lost much of its power in recent years. At one time, political parties like the National Front called to repatriate immigrants. That was called racist. They campaigned to stop legal immigration. That was also called racist. Now even opposing illegal immigration is branded racist. But this is no longer simply about race, if it was at all. The United States has had its own problems with illegal immigration, but now, thankfully, it has a government that is putting its own people first. The treacherous Biden administration opened the borders, literally inviting the world and its dog in. By a conservative estimate, 12 million people crossed into America illegally. These included entire families, but also terrorist elements and criminal gangs. The Trump administration has as good as halted all illegal immigration and is now deporting illegals, starting with the worst of the worst, but some of these illegals will never be going home. They include this man who murdered Laken Riley and the two illegals who raped and murdered 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungaray. This is, or rather was, Ivory Smith. She was 7 years old when she was killed by illegal immigrant Joel Gonzalez Shakin, who was driving while drunk. In spite of the sterling efforts of the Trump administration, many Democrat states are hell-bent on harbouring illegals and virtue signalling by giving them special treatment. Understandably, this causes outrage, and you don't have to be white to oppose madness.
I'm a person that lives on the south side of Chicago, and the migrants that have come in, at one point they were coming in, we were feeling very sorry for them because they came in at a time where the weather was cold. So we're seeing all these people in tents and all this and that, but then we find out that they're getting $15,000 in food stamps, $5,000 in cash. I work for a company, which I will not say, that they're able to come in and they're able to get internet and Wi-Fi and all of this free because guess what? The government are paying their rent for 2 years. Why is the government paying people that came from another country rent for 2 years? Can we explain that?
This is businesswoman Danielle Carter Walters, who has been at war with the corrupt and incompetent administration of Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson.
I don't want anybody who crossed over here illegally unvetted. I don't want them in my community. The Democratic Party is so far from reality. They go in their gated communities. I don't see any of those people that's advocating to keep these people here. I don't see them in their house and their communities.
Blacks have been in America nearly as long as whites, so they have a full stake in the country. Until the 1960s, Britain was overwhelmingly white, but now there are many second and third generation non-whites who are also citizens. Some of them are waking up to this madness too, because no parent worthy of the name wants to see his or her daughter assaulted, raped, or even murdered by a lowlife who shouldn't be in the country in the first place. In May 2024, this lowlife from Somalia murdered this man in a Derbyshire bank. Govinda Singh Johal was a local businessman and a total stranger to his killer. Many non-whites have also realised that allowing unchecked immigration is killing the goose that laid the golden egg. As some pundits have pointed out, if you import the third world, you get third world conditions, including a dramatic drop in our standard of living. Some people on the so-called far right, and yes, it does exist, have called this an Islamic invasion. The reality is that Islamic countries and others have been dumping their undesirables in Europe. There are definitely terrorist elements among them. This creature who has a Kalashnikov tattooed on his face. He was given a 5-year sentence for threatening to kill Nigel Farage. The far right isn't a problem and never has been. The far right is always a reaction to injustice. The most extreme example of this is, of course, the rise of Hitler. It was the unjust settlement imposed on Germany after the end of the First World War that led to this, and to the Second World War. Punitive reparations and the stripping of its colonies imposed austerity on the German people, leaving them with harsh choices: the proven terror of communism or the relatively unknown Nazism. Contrast this with the treatment of Japan after the Second World War. Tokyo had been firebombed while Hiroshima and Nagasaki were destroyed by the most terrible weapons ever invented. But this was how Tokyo looked in 1955. The incessant comparison with the Nazis has become comical since the outrages of October 7, 2023, because so many of these people were out in the streets the following day supporting the murderers. What does the extreme left do about the fake asylum seeker problem? They campaigned for more of them. Talk about insane. Women against the far right indeed. The black woman in this photograph is Diane Abbott, the long-term Labour supporter and MP who sent her son to private school so he wouldn't get involved in gangs. Look at these clowns. Bournemouth is in Dorset. It used to be the jewel in the county's crown. Now it is overrun with fake asylum seekers. Yeah, that's right, only Nazis opposed an invasion of fake asylum seekers. But didn't our fathers, grandfathers and great-grandfathers fight a world war to stop a Nazi invasion? And these clowns were protesting epic before that lowlife was convicted of putting his grubby hands on a woman and a schoolgirl. These people have sometimes been asked by citizen journalists if they would invite a bogus asylum seeker into their own homes. They're not so enthusiastic then. You can still save this country from the Starmer gang, but time is running out. So the choice is yours. Are you going to be scared off by traitors calling you racist, whatever that vacuous word now means? Or are you going to do something about it before your daughter is indecently assaulted or worse? Before you lose your job because your employer is taxed to death to keep these parasites in luxury and to keep importing them?